Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. What if I told you that the most magnetic people in the room aren't the loudest, richest, or most attractive, but the ones who barely try, yet somehow draw respect, curiosity, and admiration wherever they go? You've seen them. They don't chase validation. They don't beg for attention. And still, people lean in. In a world obsessed with external approval, Stoicism offers a powerful shortcut. Master yourself, and the world responds. Attraction, influence, and confidence aren't built by impressing others. They're built by embodying a few timeless traits that silently signal strength, discipline, and self-respect. In this video, I'm going to break down just 9 Stoic traits that, when practiced consistently, change the way people perceive you, without manipulation, without pretending, without saying more than necessary. These traits don't just make you attractive, they make you unshakable. And here's the important part. Each trait builds on the previous one. If you skip ahead, you miss the transformation. But if you stay until the very end, you'll walk away with a mindset shift that most people never achieve, and that alone sets you apart. So slow down, focus, watch this till the end. Because once you understand these traits, you won't need to attract anyone anymore. They'll come to you. Number 1, self-control. Self-control is the quiet force that changes everything about how you move through the world. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily like gravity. The Stoics didn't see self-control as repression or stiffness. They saw it as freedom. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Read that again. Freedom doesn't begin with getting what you want. It begins with not being ruled by impulses, moods, urges, or the need for approval. And the moment you start practicing that kind of mastery, people feel it. You don't announce it. You don't explain it. It's sensed. When you have self-control, you stop leaking energy. You stop reacting to everything. You stop being pulled in 10 directions by distractions, desires, and emotional spikes. Most people live in reaction mode, reacting to boredom, reacting to temptation, reacting to discomfort. You don't have to. Stoicism teaches that you always have a choice between stimulus and response. Reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That power is self-control in its form. And strength like that is deeply attractive because it signals stability, calm, reliability, depth. Here's the truth you might not want to hear but need to. Every time you give in too easily, you weaken your presence. Every time you delay gratification, even in small ways, you sharpen it. Self-control isn't built in heroic moments. It's built in quiet decisions no one applauds, choosing not to speak when your ego wants to, choosing to stay focused when your mind wants escape, choosing discipline over comfort. Over time, these choices change how you carry yourself. Your posture shifts, your eyes steady. Your words become fewer but heavier. People listen more closely when you speak because you're no longer desperate to fill silence. Stoicism asks you to train yourself the way an athlete trains their body. Slowly, intentionally, with patience. Seneca wrote, "The first step towards self-control is moderation." Not extremes, not punishment, moderation. You don't need to eliminate desire, you need to govern it. Desire is like fire. Uncontrolled, it burns everything. Contained, it warms and fuels. The goal isn't to feel nothing. The goal is to not be owned by what you feel. When you master this, you stop broadcasting neediness. You stop chasing reactions. And attraction flows naturally toward you because you're no longer chasing it. If you want to practice self-control in a real, practical way, start with your attention. That's where everything begins. Attention is the currency of your life. Wherever it goes, your energy follows. Decide deliberately where you place it. When your mind wanders, bring it back, again and again, not with frustration but with firmness. This is a daily exercise. Each time you notice an impulse, check, scroll, distract, react, pause for 3 breaths, just 3. That pause is power. That pause is you saying, I decide. Do this often enough and you'll feel a subtle shift. You'll feel less rushed, less scattered, more solid. Another Stoic exercise is voluntary discomfort. Not because suffering is noble, but because comfort weakens your ability to choose. When you always do what feels good, your will becomes fragile. Seneca believed in occasionally denying himself pleasures to remind his mind who was in charge. You can do the same in simple ways. Delay gratification on purpose. Sit with discomfort without trying to escape it. Let urges rise and fall without obeying them. Urges always peak and pass. Always. When you see that for yourself, something clicks. You realize you're stronger than you thought. Self-control also shows up in how you speak. Not every thought deserves a voice. Not every emotion needs expression. The Stoics valued restraint in speech because words reveal inner order or chaos. Before you speak, ask yourself, is this necessary? Is it true? Is it aligned with who I'm trying to become? Silence, when chosen, is not weakness. It's command. People feel safe around someone who isn't emotionally volatile, who doesn't overshare, who doesn't explode or plead for attention. Calm is contagious and rare. You'll notice something else as your self-control deepens. You stop trying to impress. You stop performing. You stop bending yourself into shapes to be liked. That's because self-control builds self-respect, and self-respect is magnetic. Wrote, respect yourself enough to walk away from anything that no longer serves you. That includes habits, thoughts, and behaviors that drain you. When you respect yourself, others follow your lead, not because you demand it, but because your energy sets a standard. This is important. Self-control is not about becoming rigid or cold. It's about becoming intentional. You still feel joy. You still feel desire. You still feel passion. But now you're steering instead of drifting. You decide when to engage and when to withdraw. You decide what deserves your effort. That clarity makes your presence grounded. People trust grounded individuals. They're drawn to them instinctively. To strengthen this trait daily, end each day with a brief review. The Stoics did this. Ask yourself, where did I act with control today? Where did I give it away? No judgment, just awareness. Awareness precedes change. Over time, patterns emerge. And once you see them, you can interrupt them. This is how self-mastery is built, one honest reflection at a time. Remember, attraction isn't something you force. It's something you embody. When you have self-control, you radiate a quiet confidence that doesn't beg to be noticed. It simply is. And in a world full of noise, impulsiveness, and emotional excess, that kind of steadiness stands out more than any clever words ever could. Number 2, emotional discipline. Emotional discipline is not about suppressing what you feel or turning yourself into something cold and unreachable. The Stoics never taught that. Reminded himself, do not be carried away by the impression, but say to it, you are an impression and not at all the thing you appear to be. That single line captures the essence of emotional discipline. You still feel everything, but you don't let every feeling drag you around by the collar. You stop reacting on impulse and start responding with intention. And the moment you do that, something shifts. Your presence steadies. Your words land differently. People sense that you are not ruled by every emotional wave, and that alone makes you magnetic. Most people live emotionally undisciplined lives without realizing it. They react instantly. They explain themselves too much. They get defensive, excited, discouraged, hopeful, angry, all within the same hour. There's nothing mysterious about why that energy repels rather than attracts. Emotional discipline is attractive because it signals self-mastery. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." When you practice emotional discipline, you are silently communicating that you are grounded, self-contained, and not easily shaken. You become someone others feel safe around, curious about, and drawn toward, even if they can't explain why. This discipline begins with awareness. You don't jump into control, you step into observation. When an emotion arises, you notice it before you act on it. You feel irritation, excitement, longing, disappointment, but you pause, just a breath, just a moment. That pause is everything. In that space, you reclaim choice. Seneca wrote, "The greatest power is to be able to pause." Emotional discipline lives in that pause. You stop letting emotions dictate your tone, your posture, your decisions. You don't deny them, but you also don't hand them the steering wheel. As you practice this, your inner world becomes quieter. Not empty, quieter. You stop rehearsing arguments that never happen. You stop replaying imagined outcomes. You stop leaking emotional energy in every direction. And when your inner world settles, your outer presence becomes heavier, calmer, more assured. People feel it immediately. Emotional discipline gives you a kind of gravity. You don't chase reactions. You don't seek emotional reassurance. You stand firm, and others adjust themselves around you. There's a powerful Stoic idea that emotions are not commands, they're signals. Wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." When you adopt this mindset, you stop blaming others for how you feel. You stop outsourcing your emotional state. You understand that while you can't control what happens, you can always control your interpretation. That understanding alone changes how you show up in every interaction. You become less reactive, less needy, less volatile, and paradoxically more attractive. To build emotional discipline, you need to train your inner reflexes. One practical exercise is daily emotional labeling. When a feeling arises, silently name it without judgment. Not a story, not an explanation, just the word frustration, anticipation, doubt, calm. This simple act creates distance between you and the emotion. It reminds you that you are the observer, not the emotion itself. Over time, this weakens impulsive reactions and strengthens clarity. You don't eliminate emotion. You refine your relationship with it. Another practice is voluntary restraint. Choose intentionally not to express every emotion you feel, not because it's wrong to feel it, but because not every feeling deserves expression. Seneca warned, "Anger, if not restrained, is often more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it." Restraint builds inner muscle. You learn that silence can be strength, that calm can be louder than reaction. This doesn't make you passive, it makes you precise. When you do speak or act, it carries weight because it's chosen, not compulsive. Emotional discipline also changes how you handle desire and attachment. Instead of clinging, you hold lightly. Instead of craving outcomes, you focus on conduct. Epictetus taught, "Do not seek for things to happen the way you want, but wish for them to happen as they do." When you internalize this, you stop projecting emotional pressure outward. You stop needing others to validate your inner state. That independence is deeply attractive. It signals abundance of character, not scarcity of attention. You'll notice that emotionally disciplined people don't rush. They don't fill silence out of discomfort. They are comfortable waiting, listening, letting moments breathe. You can practice this by slowing your responses intentionally. When you're about to react, count to 3 internally. Let your body settle. Let your mind catch up. This small delay trains you to respond from choice rather than habit. Over time, your emotional baseline stabilizes. You become harder to provoke and easier to respect. The Stoics also believed in rehearsing adversity, not to become pessimistic, but resilient. You can practice this mentally by imagining emotional challenges and calmly walking yourself through them without drama. Not fantasizing. Just acknowledging that discomfort is part of life and that you are capable of meeting it with composure. Reminded himself, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Emotional discipline turns obstacles into training grounds. What's powerful is that none of this requires changing who you are at your core. You're not becoming someone else. You're stripping away emotional noise that never belonged to you in the first place. As discipline grows, authenticity deepens. You act in alignment with your values rather than your moods. People sense that consistency. They trust it. They're drawn to it. In the end, emotional discipline is quiet confidence. It's the ability to feel deeply without being destabilized, to care without clinging, to remain open without being reactive. When you cultivate it, attraction stops being something you chase. It becomes something that happens naturally as a byproduct of inner order, or as put it, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Number 3, inner calm. Inner calm isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't rush to prove anything. And that's exactly why it attracts. When you cultivate inner calm, you stop leaking nervous energy into the world. You stop trying to control outcomes, people, reactions. You stand still inside yourself, and paradoxically, that stillness pulls others toward you. Wrote, "Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Most people never visit that place. You decide to live there, and that decision changes how you're perceived before you even speak. You feel this when you slow your inner pace. Not your body, not your schedule, your thoughts. Inner calm begins the moment you stop arguing with reality. The Stoics were relentless about this. Epictetus reminded you that it's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things. When you internalize that, you stop reacting impulsively. You don't get pulled into emotional turbulence. You don't mirror chaos back to the world. You become grounded, and grounded people feel safe to be around. They feel rare. They feel trustworthy. Attraction grows quietly in that space. Most people live internally cluttered lives. Their minds are noisy, anxious, constantly scanning for approval or threat. You don't have to live that way. Inner calm is trained. It's built through repeated refusal to panic, through choosing response over reaction, through letting thoughts pass instead of grabbing onto them. When you practice this daily, your presence changes. Your silence gains weight. Your words become deliberate. You stop oversharing. You stop filling space just to ease discomfort. You realize you don't need to be impressive to be compelling. Calm becomes your signature. Seneca said, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Read that again. Inner calm grows when you stop pre-living problems, when you stop rehearsing future failures, when you stay anchored in the present moment where things are almost always manageable. You don't deny difficulty, you just refuse to dramatize it internally. That restraint gives you emotional efficiency. Others feel it. They sense that you won't collapse under pressure, that you won't demand emotional regulation from them. That's magnetic. To build this, you must train your nervous system. Start with a simple daily practice. Sit still for 5 minutes without distraction. No phone, no music, just you and your breath. When thoughts arise, don't fight them, don't follow them either. Let them pass like clouds. This is not relaxation, it's discipline. You're teaching yourself that you don't have to obey every impulse. Over time, this creates space between stimulus and response. That space is inner calm. That space is power. Another exercise, practice emotional delay. When something triggers you internally, don't act on it immediately. Count 10 slow breaths. Ask yourself, is this within my control? If it's not, release it. If it is, act deliberately. This is Stoicism in motion. This is how you stop bleeding urgency into your behavior. Urgency repels, calm attracts. You'll notice that as your inner calm grows, your need for validation shrinks. You stop fishing for reassurance. You stop trying to be liked. You stop bending your values for approval. Epictetus was blunt. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Inner calm means you're no longer emotionally hostage to opinions. That independence is deeply attractive. People feel it instantly. They may not be able to name it, but they sense it. Inner calm also sharpens your boundaries. You don't overextend, you don't chase, you don't cling, you allow things to unfold. That doesn't mean passivity, it means confidence in timing, confidence in yourself. When you move from this place, your actions feel clean, unforced, intentional. You're not trying to get somewhere emotionally. You're already there. Train this further by practicing voluntary discomfort, cold water on your face, sitting with silence, resisting the urge to check notifications. These small acts strengthen your capacity to remain composed under stress. Practice this intentionally, reminding himself that he didn't need excess to function well. You don't either. Every time you choose calm over comfort, you expand your internal stability. There will be moments when your calm is tested. That's the point. Inner calm isn't fragile, it's forged. When emotions rise, don't suppress them. Observe them, name them internally. Let them peak and fall. This builds emotional self-trust. You realize you can experience intensity without losing control. That realization alone changes how you carry yourself. Your posture softens, your gaze steadies, your energy slows down, attraction follows naturally. Make it a habit to end each day with reflection. Ask yourself where you reacted unnecessarily, where you stayed composed, not with judgment but with curiosity. Seneca often reflected nightly, reviewing his conduct. This builds awareness. Awareness builds choice. Choice builds calm. Inner calm isn't about being detached from life. It's about being deeply rooted within it. When you stop needing the world to behave a certain way for you to feel okay, you become free. And freedom is felt. It's felt in your pauses, your restraint, your steadiness. People are drawn to what feels solid. Become that. Start today. Slow your inner tempo. Breathe when you want to rush. Pause when you want to react. Choose presence over performance. Over time, inner calm won't be something you practice. It will be who you are. And without trying, without forcing, you'll notice something shift. People listen more closely. They lean in. They feel something different around you. That's the quiet pull of inner calm. Number 4, confidence without arrogance. Confidence without arrogance is one of those quiet forces that changes how people feel around you before they can even explain why. You don't announce it. You don't perform it. You simply are. And that difference matters more than you've probably been told. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That line alone dismantles arrogance at its root. Arrogance needs applause. Confidence doesn't. Confidence is what remains when you no longer need to be seen as impressive, only grounded. You can feel the shift when you stop trying to convince others of your value and start acting from the assumption that it's already there. Your voice slows. Your movements become economical. Your words carry weight because you don't flood the space with them. You're not rushing to prove intelligence, strength, or charm. You trust that what needs to be said will be said, and what doesn't won't. Wrote, never value the admiration of people who do not admire themselves. Read that again. Arrogance is built on borrowed approval. Confidence is self-generated. One depends on others. The other depends on discipline. Most people mistake confidence for dominance, volume, or bravado, but those are often masks for insecurity. Real confidence is calm. It doesn't posture, it doesn't interrupt. It listens without shrinking and speaks without aggression. You don't need to correct everyone. You don't need to win every exchange. You don't need to be right out loud. You let silence do some of the work. Seneca said, "He who knows himself does not despise another." When you're secure, comparison fades. And when comparison fades, arrogance has nothing left to feed on. This is where attraction quietly begins. Not because you're trying to attract, but because you're not grasping. People feel safe around someone who isn't desperate for validation. They sense stability. They sense self-trust. You're not scanning the room for approval. You're not adjusting yourself to be liked. You're rooted. And rooted people don't chase, others naturally orbit them. That's not strategy, that's presence. To build this kind of confidence, you have to stop outsourcing your self-worth. Every time you look to others to confirm who you are, you weaken the foundation. The Stoics practiced internal validation relentlessly. Epictetus reminded his students that external praise is outside your control, and therefore irrelevant to your peace. You can apply this immediately. When you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause. When you feel the impulse to prove something, wait. Ask yourself, if no one noticed this, would I still stand by it? That question alone burns away arrogance and strengthens confidence. Here's a simple exercise. For one full day, remove unnecessary self-promotion from your speech. Don't downplay yourself, but don't embellish either. State things plainly. Let your actions speak internally first. Notice the discomfort. That discomfort is arrogance starving. Sit with it. Another practice. Intentionally allow others to misunderstand you without rushing to clarify. Not because you're passive, but because you don't need immediate agreement to feel whole. Advised, be indifferent to what makes no difference. Misinterpretation often makes no difference, unless your ego demands repair. Confidence without arrogance also changes how you handle disagreement. You don't collapse and you don't attack, you stay steady. You can say, I may be wrong without shrinking. You can say, I disagree without hostility. That balance is rare, and rarity attracts, not because it's flashy, but because it's trustworthy. People sense when someone isn't ruled by reactivity. They feel it in your packing, your eye contact, your restraint. Another exercise, practice voluntary humility. Not humiliation, humility. Choose the lower position in your own mind. Seneca encouraged this as a form of strength training for the soul. When you stop needing to be elevated, you paradoxically rise. Try this daily. Remind yourself that your value isn't increased by praise or reduced by silence. Say it internally until it settles. Then move through the world as if that truth were unshakable. Confidence without arrogance is not about thinking you're superior. It's about refusing to believe you're inferior. It's the middle path. The Stoics walked it deliberately. You can too. Strip away the need to impress. Replace it with the commitment to act with integrity whether anyone is watching or not. Over time, your presence will change. People will feel it. You won't need to announce it. And that quiet certainty, the kind that doesn't beg, boast, or bend, is what draws people in without effort, without force, and without noise. Number 5, purposeful silence. Purposeful silence is not the absence of words, it's the presence of control. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus warned, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. When you rush to fill every gap with noise, you give away something valuable, your center. Silence, when chosen deliberately, pulls that center back into you. It steadies you. It tells the world that you are not anxious to be seen, not desperate to be heard, not afraid of space. And that calm, that restraint, is felt instantly by others, even if they can't explain why. You don't need to announce yourself to matter. You don't need constant commentary to prove intelligence, wit, or relevance. In fact, the more you speak without intention, the more you dilute your presence. Purposeful silence works the opposite way. It concentrates you. It makes every word you do speak land with weight. Reminded himself, let your speech be better than silence or be silent. Read that again. Not louder, not smarter, better. Silence becomes your filter. It keeps you from reacting emotionally, from performing for approval. And when you stop performing, attraction changes direction. People begin leaning toward you instead of you leaning toward them. This kind of silence is rooted in self-mastery. You pause not because you lack something to say, but because you choose not to say everything. That pause gives you power over impulse. It separates reaction from response. Most people speak to discharge tension. You learn to hold it. You let thoughts settle before they escape your mouth. That alone changes how you're perceived. Calm replaces urgency. Groundedness replaces need. And without trying, you project authority over yourself, which is the only authority that truly matters. There's also something deeply attractive about someone who is comfortable with quiet. Silence exposes insecurity quickly. Many people talk because they're afraid of being forgotten in the gap. When you don't share that fear, it shows. Seneca wrote, "Silence is a lesson learned from the many sufferings of life." Silence teaches patience. It teaches you that you don't need to win every moment. You don't need to dominate space to occupy it fully. You begin to understand that presence is not measured in decibels, but in depth. Purposeful silence also sharpens your awareness. When you stop rushing to speak, you start noticing more. Your own internal reactions, the emotional currents in the room, the unspoken signals others broadcast without knowing. You become harder to manipulate because you're not broadcasting your inner state constantly. You don't give away leverage. This is why silence has always been associated with strength. Not brute strength, inner strength. The kind that doesn't announce itself but is felt. Now, this doesn't mean withdrawing or becoming cold. Stoic silence is warm, grounded, and intentional. It's a silence that listens, a silence that observes, a silence that allows others to reveal themselves fully. When you stop interrupting the flow with unnecessary words, people often say more than they intend. You don't need to probe, you don't need to chase. You simply allow space. And space has a strange effect on people. It invites projection, curiosity, and respect. If you want to cultivate this trait, start small. Begin with pauses. When you feel the urge to respond immediately, don't. Take a breath. Count silently. Let the moment settle. Ask yourself, is what I'm about to say useful, necessary, and aligned with who I want to be? If the answer is no, stay quiet. This isn't suppression, it's selection. You're choosing quality over quantity. Another exercise is deliberate restraint. For a set period each day, decide to speak less than usual, not in a forced or awkward way, but with awareness. Notice how often words want to escape simply to fill space. Let them pass. You'll feel discomfort at first. That's normal. Discomfort is the signal that you're breaking a habit. Stay with it. Over time, that discomfort turns into composure. You can also practice silent reflection. At the end of the day, review your conversations mentally. Where did silence serve you? Where did unnecessary speech weaken your position or drain your energy? Use this kind of nightly reflection to refine his character. You can do the same. This isn't about guilt. It's about calibration. Each day, you become slightly more intentional. Purposeful silence aligns you with the Stoic idea of focusing only on what's within your control. You can't control how others interpret your words, but you can control whether you speak at all. That choice alone reduces friction in your life. Fewer regrets, fewer explanations, fewer moments where you wish you had held back. Silence becomes a form of discipline, and discipline becomes freedom. Over time, you'll notice a shift. People listen more closely when you do speak. Your words feel considered, not scattered. You're no longer chasing moments, you're anchoring them. And the most important shift happens internally. You stop needing external validation to feel solid. You don't rush to prove intelligence or value. You know who you are without narrating it. Remember what Seneca said, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." Purposeful silence keeps you rooted in the present. You're not scrambling for the next line, the next impression, the next reaction. You're here, fully, calmly, intentionally. So practice it, protect it. Use silence not as a shield, but as a foundation. Let it shape your presence, refine your speech, and strengthen your self-command. When you master purposeful silence, you don't just attract others, you attract yourself back to center. And from that center, everything else flows naturally. Number 6, consistency in actions. Consistency in actions is one of those quiet forces that reshapes how people feel around you long before they understand why. You don't announce it, you don't explain it, you simply live it. And over time, it becomes impossible to ignore. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus warned, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." That single line carries more weight than most people realize. When your actions line up day after day, When your behavior doesn't fluctuate with mood, pressure, or the need for approval, you begin to feel solid, predictable in the best way, grounded. People sense that stability instantly, and the human mind is naturally drawn toward what feels steady and trustworthy. You don't need to be intense. You don't need to be dramatic. What you need is alignment. Consistency is what happens when your inner principles quietly dictate your outer behavior. You say less because you don't need to convince. You promise less because you intend to deliver everything you commit to. Wrote, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. That's consistency in its form, not bursts of effort followed by long absences. Not motivation that fades as soon as things get uncomfortable. Just a steady rhythm of action that doesn't depend on external reward. Most people underestimate how rare this is. Many start strong and fade quietly. Others change direction every time emotion spikes. When your actions remain calm and repeatable, even when no one is watching, you signal self-mastery. And self-mastery is magnetic. It tells the world you can be relied upon, not because you say so, but because your behavior has proven it again and again. Attraction grows in environments where the nervous system can relax, and consistency creates that environment without effort. You build this trait the same way Stoics built character, through daily, intentional practice, not perfection, not intensity, repetition. Seneca reminded us, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Consistency is the refusal to waste your own potential by starting over endlessly. You show up in the same way with the same values, whether the day feels heavy or light. That reliability becomes part of your presence. People don't have to guess who you are today. And that certainty is rare comfort. Here, where you take action, choose one small behavior that aligns with the person you want to become and commit to it daily. Not when it's convenient, daily. Keep it almost laughably simple so your mind can't negotiate its way out. Then track it privately. No announcements, no validation, just quiet execution. This trains your nervous system to trust yourself. And once you trust yourself, others feel it instinctively. Another practice the Stoics used was evening reflection. Did this relentlessly. At the end of the day, ask yourself 3 questions. Did my actions match my values today? Where did I drift? Where did I hold firm? No shame, no emotional punishment, just observation. Consistency grows through awareness, not self-criticism. When you calmly notice your patterns, you gain the power to refine them. Understand this, attraction is not created by grand gestures, it's created by patterns. People don't fall for moments, they respond to signals repeated over time. When your words and actions move in the same direction consistently, you stop feeling scattered. You stop needing to prove. Your presence becomes clean, direct, undeniable. Epictetus also said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That's your blueprint. Decide who you are, then let your actions quietly reinforce that decision every day. Consistency turns identity into reality. And reality, when it's grounded and stable, draws people in without force. Stay patient with this process. Consistency compounds slowly, then suddenly. You won't feel magnetic overnight, but one day you'll notice that people listen more closely, trust more quickly, feel calmer around you. That's the signal working beneath the surface. You don't need to change everything at once. You need to stop changing who you are depending on circumstances. Choose your standards. Live them repeatedly. Let your actions speak in a language no one can argue with. This is how consistency becomes not just a habit, but a presence that attracts effortlessly. Number 7. Detachment from validation. Detachment from validation is one of those ideas that sounds simple until you actually try to live it. You've been conditioned, subtly and constantly, to look outward for approval. A nod, a compliment, a message, a reaction. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that being liked is safety, that being praised is progress, that being noticed is proof you matter. Stoicism steps in and quietly says something radical. You don't need any of that to stand firm. Epictetus put it plainly: if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Read that again. He wasn't saying seek rejection. He was saying stop outsourcing your worth. The moment you stop asking the world for permission to be yourself, something in you settles. Your nervous system exhales. You move slower. You speak less but with more weight. And people feel that before they understand it. When you detach from validation, you stop performing. You're no longer adjusting your words to be liked or shaping your behavior to avoid disapproval. You're not scanning faces for reactions or replaying conversations in your head. You act from principle, not applause. Reminded himself, I do what is mine to do, the rest does not disturb me. That's not emotional coldness. That's emotional sovereignty. When your actions come from your values instead of the crowd's mood, you become consistent. Predictable in character, not behavior. And consistency is deeply attractive because it signals inner order. Chaos seeks order instinctively. People lean toward those who are self-contained. Detachment doesn't mean you reject connection. It means you don't beg for it. You stop trying to be chosen and start choosing yourself. That shift alone changes your posture, your tone, your timing. You're no longer rushing to fill silence or over-explaining to be understood. You're comfortable letting things land, or not land at all. Seneca warned, he who is dependent on another man's approval has no peace. Think about how much mental energy you've spent wondering how you're perceived. Now imagine reclaiming that energy and redirecting it inward. Calm replaces urgency. Presence replaces anxiety. And presence is magnetic. There's a quiet confidence that forms when you no longer need external confirmation. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to defend it. You just live from it. This is why detachment from validation is not about arrogance. It's about groundedness. Arrogance still needs an audience. Groundedness doesn't. When you detach, compliments no longer inflate you and criticism no longer devastates you. Both pass through without sticking. You listen, you extract what's useful, and you discard the rest. That emotional resilience creates a sense of safety around you. People feel they don't have to manage your reactions. They don't have to tiptoe. And that freedom makes them want to stay. Stoicism teaches you to draw a hard line between what's in your control and what is. Other people's opinions will never be in your control, ever. The sooner you accept that, the lighter you become. Epictetus again. If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. Validation-seeking hands others the remote control to your emotions. Detachment takes it back. You respond instead of react. You decide instead of chase. And paradoxically, the less you need validation, the more naturally it arrives. Not because you're trying, but because you're no longer needy. Now let's make this practical. Start with a simple daily exercise. At the end of the day, ask yourself one question: did I act today to be approved or to be aligned? Don't judge the answer, just notice. Awareness is the first layer of freedom. Another practice: deliberately pause before seeking reassurance. When you feel the urge to explain yourself, to justify, to check for agreement, stop. Take one breath. Let the urge pass. You'll discover that most of the time, nothing bad happens. Silence doesn't kill you. Disapproval doesn't either. Each time you survive that pause, your dependence weakens. Train yourself to self-validate. That doesn't mean empty affirmations. It means setting standards and honoring them. Decide what matters to you. Decide how you behave when no one is watching. Then hold yourself to that. Wrote his meditations as reminders to himself, not for praise. Follow that example. Keep private promises. Build integrity quietly. When your self-respect grows, external validation loses its grip. You stop craving applause because you already know where you stand with yourself. Another exercise: imagine removing an invisible audience from your life. Do things as if no one is scoring you. Speak as if no one is keeping tally. Move as if no one is judging. This mental shift is powerful. It returns you to your own center. You become harder to manipulate and easier to trust. People sense when you're not trying to extract something from them. That absence of need creates space, and in that space, attraction naturally forms. Detachment from validation is a discipline. You won't master it overnight. Some days you'll slip back into old patterns, that's fine. Stoicism isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Seneca said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." Each moment is another chance to choose inner authority over external noise. Each choice strengthens the muscle. Over time, you'll notice a shift. You'll feel steadier, less reactive, more at ease in your own presence. And here's the quiet truth. When you no longer ask to be seen, you are seen. When you stop asking to be chosen, you are chosen. Not because you engineered it, but because you removed the very tension that repels connection. Detachment from validation doesn't make you distant, it makes you whole. And wholeness effortlessly draws people in. Number 8, mental resilience. Mental resilience is the quiet force people feel before they ever understand it. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself, but it's unmistakable. You can sense it in someone who doesn't rush to explain themselves, who doesn't crumble when things don't go their way, who stays steady while everything around them feels unstable. And whether you realize it or not, this quality pulls people toward you because it signals safety, strength, and depth. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That sentence alone contains the blueprint for attraction and influence. When you train your mind to remain composed, you stop broadcasting neediness, fear, and reactivity. You begin to project calm authority, and calm is rare. Calm is magnetic. You don't build mental resilience by pretending you don't feel things. You build it by refusing to be ruled by every passing emotion. Most people live at the mercy of their moods. A bad moment ruins their day. A small setback defines their week. A single comment shakes their confidence. When you decide to live differently, when you choose to pause instead of react, something shifts inside you. You create space between stimulus and response. In that space, you regain control. Wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That strength is not aggressive. It's grounded, and people instinctively trust someone who trusts themselves. If you want to cultivate this trait, you must start by observing your inner dialogue, not judging it, watching it. Notice how quickly your mind dramatizes situations. Notice how often it seeks reassurance, approval, certainty. The Stoics believe that most suffering comes not from events, but from the stories we attach to them. Your first exercise is simple but uncomfortable. When something disturbs you, don't immediately fix it, escape it, or explain it. Sit with it. Breathe. Ask yourself, is this within my control? If it isn't, practice letting it pass without resistance. This single habit trains emotional endurance. Over time, your nervous system learns that not every discomfort is a threat. That calm response begins to show in your posture, your voice, your presence. Mental resilience also means becoming difficult to offend. Not because you're numb, but because your sense of self is no longer fragile. Seneca warned, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." When you stop taking everything personally, you reclaim enormous energy. You stop reacting to opinions that don't build you. You stop shrinking in rooms where others try to dominate through noise or drama. This doesn't make you passive, it makes you selective. And selectiveness is attractive because it signals self-respect. You don't chase every conversation. You don't defend every stance. You don't need to win every exchange. You know who you are, and that steadiness speaks louder than words. To strengthen this, practice voluntary discomfort. The Stoics regularly trained their minds by stepping outside comfort on purpose. not to punish themselves, but to remind their minds that they could endure more than they thought. Choose small challenges that test your patience, your impulse control, your emotional discipline. Delay gratification. Sit in silence. Resist the urge to react immediately. Each time you do this, you are teaching your mind that it doesn't need to panic. This creates a deep internal confidence that others can feel. You become someone who doesn't break under pressure, and that reliability draws people in. Mental resilience also shows up in how you handle uncertainty. Most people crave guarantees. They want reassurance before they move. They want certainty before they commit. But resilience allows you to act without knowing every outcome. You trust your ability to adapt. Epictetus reminded us, "Seek not for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." When you embody this mindset, you stop fighting reality. You flow with it. And there is something deeply attractive about someone who isn't constantly resisting life, but meeting it with composure and quiet courage. Another powerful exercise is negative visualization. This may sound counterintuitive, but it builds immense mental strength. Briefly imagine things not going your way, not to scare yourself, but to normalize uncertainty. When your mind stops being shocked by the idea of loss or failure, it stops clinging so tightly. You become freer, lighter, less desperate. That freedom changes how you move through the world. People sense that you're not trying to extract something from them. You're not emotionally dependent on outcomes, and that independence creates space for genuine connection. Mental resilience also means being patient with your own growth. You don't rush transformation. You don't berate yourself for not being perfect yet. You understand that strength is built through repetition, not intensity. Advised, be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. That balance is crucial. You hold yourself to high standards internally, but you remain composed externally. You don't leak frustration. You don't lash out. You channel your energy inward, refining your character day by day. As you develop this trait, you'll notice a shift in how people respond to you. Conversations feel different. There's less tension, more curiosity, more respect. Not because you're trying to impress, but because your presence is grounded. You listen fully. You speak deliberately. You don't rush to fill silence. Silence no longer scares you. And silence, when owned, becomes powerful. End each day with reflection. This was a core Stoic practice. Ask yourself where you reacted emotionally instead of thoughtfully, where you gave your power away, where you held it. Don't shame yourself. Just observe and adjust. This daily check-in strengthens self-awareness, and self-awareness is the foundation of resilience. Over time, you'll find that fewer things shake you, and when your inner world becomes stable, your outer world responds. Mental resilience is not about becoming unfeeling. It's about becoming unshakable. When you master this trait, you don't just attract others. You attract opportunities, respect, and alignment. Because in a world full of emotional chaos, a steady mind is rare, and rarity is always attractive. Number 9, authenticity. Authenticity is not a performance. It's the absence of one. It's what's left when you stop editing yourself for approval and stop shrinking or exaggerating who you are just to be accepted. And here's the part most people miss. Authenticity isn't loud, it's steady. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't beg to be seen. It simply is. Put it plainly when he wrote, "Be yourself plain and simple, and don't worry about appearing consistent." That line alone dismantles the exhausting habit of trying to be everything for everyone. When you're authentic, you're not trying to win people over. You're giving them the rare experience of encountering someone who is at ease with himself, and that calm self-possession is deeply attractive. You don't become authentic by adding traits. You become authentic by removing the layers that don't belong to you, the forced opinions, the borrowed confidence, the rehearsed responses, the urge to agree just to keep the peace. Stoicism teaches you to live in accordance with your nature, not your impulses and not the crowd's expectations. Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That's authenticity in its form, the willingness to be misunderstood rather than self-betrayed. When you stop adjusting your inner compass to match external noise, something shifts. Your words carry more weight. Your silence feels intentional. Your presence feels grounded. People sense it before they can explain it. Most attraction is rooted in trust, and authenticity is the fastest way to signal it. Not because you overshare or reveal everything, but because your inner and outer worlds are aligned. There's no friction between what you think, what you say, and how you act. Seneca reminded us, the greatest obstacle to living is expectancy. The moment you stop expecting approval, attraction begins to happen naturally. When you're no longer scanning faces for validation, you start occupying space differently. You stand firmer. You listen without rehearsing your reply. You speak without second-guessing every word. That congruence is rare, and rarity is magnetic. You don't need to convince anyone of who you are. In fact, the more you try, the less authentic you become. Stoicism encourages you to focus on what's within your control, your values, your actions, your standards, and release what isn't, including how others interpret you. This detachment doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. And clarity is attractive because it feels safe. When you're authentic, people don't feel manipulated or managed. They feel like they're dealing with something real, something solid, something unforced. There's also courage in authenticity. Quiet courage. The courage to say no without apology. The courage to pause before responding. The courage to admit uncertainty without collapsing into self-doubt. Wrote, never let the future disturb you. You will meet it if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present. Authenticity grows when you trust yourself enough to meet the moment as you are, not as a carefully curated version of yourself. That trust in yourself radiates outward. Others feel it. They relax around it. They're drawn to it. If you want to cultivate authenticity, start with restraint. Practice not explaining yourself when no explanation is required. Practice letting a statement land without cushioning it. Practice sitting with your own thoughts instead of immediately sharing them. One simple exercise is this. Before you speak, ask yourself whether the words are meant to express truth or to manage perception. If it's the latter, pause. Silence often preserves authenticity better than speech. Another exercise is alignment. At the end of the day, reflect briefly on where your actions matched your values and where they didn't. No judgment, just awareness. Authenticity grows through noticing, not through self-punishment. You also strengthen authenticity by choosing principle over impulse. Stoicism doesn't ask you to suppress who you are, it asks you to refine it. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. When your behavior follows your values instead of your moods, people experience you as dependable, grounded, and real. You don't sway with every reaction. You don't chase every emotional high. You become predictable in the best way, steady. That steadiness is attractive because it signals maturity and inner order. There will be moments when authenticity costs you. Approval may drop, attention may fade, but what replaces it is far more powerful: self-respect. And self-respect changes how you move through the world. You don't rush, you don't overextend, you don't abandon yourself to be liked. You show up whole. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." Authenticity is freedom. Freedom from pretending, freedom from performing, freedom from the exhausting need to be someone else. Make authenticity a daily discipline. Wake up and commit to one small act of alignment, one decision that reflects who you truly are rather than who you're trying to impress. Notice how your body feels when you act from truth instead of fear. That feeling is your guide. Over time, this practice compounds. Your confidence stops being something you project and becomes something you inhabit. Attraction stops being something you chase and becomes something you allow. When you live authentically, you don't attract everyone, and that's the point. You attract the right people, the ones who resonate with your frequency, not your mask. Stoicism never promised universal approval. It promised inner peace. And paradoxically, that peace is what makes you compelling. Be real, be aligned, be unmoved by the need to be liked. In doing so, you become unforgettable. Attraction isn't about chasing attention. It's about becoming someone who doesn't need it. When you embody these 9 traits, you stop trying to impress, and people start noticing. Not because you demand their focus, but because your presence feels rare in a noisy world. So take these principles with you. Practice them quietly. Let your character speak before your words ever do. And remember, true power isn't loud, desperate, or flashy. It's calm, it's disciplined, it's unshakable. If this message resonated with you, stay on this path. Because when you master yourself, you naturally attract everything else.